Juju, please put this on the poll. Better Legacy Act, Quiet Riot or White Snake?
Wow.
Let's do Stugotz's weekend observations.
It is time for Stugotz to share his game notes. No one in the media will tell you what happened better than my boy Stu.
Weekend observations brought to you by Miller Lite. Great taste, 96 calories, available for delivery. Dan, while most eyes were on the field, mine were on a celebrity watching their favorite team win and advance to the Super Bowl. Considered by many to be the greatest musician of all time, not to mention the most successful touring act as well. People might say they are tired of the attention. But me, I can't get enough. And Dan, just like that, make no mistake about it, Bob Weir is back.
Put it on the poll, Juju. Does anyone say Bob Weir is the greatest musician of all time?
I do.
No, you didn't
And
say
countless others.
Okay.
Yep. Patrick Mahomes, here's an idea. Maybe help out your defense once in a while. Lamar Jackson, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Jurgen Klopp announcing he's leaving Liverpool at the end of the year, so he gets the applause. Jurgen Klopp, the Coach K, is strong in you.
Well said.
Thank you. Dan, you know what the C in Klopp stands for?
There's a C.
It stands for Coach K.
It's Jurgen Klopp. I don't think there's a C.
I don't think there's not a C. It's okay.
Silent. Jurgen Klopp, if you're so great, come to the MLS and do it against Messi. 24-7 Lions in the first half. 27-7 49ers in the second half.
A tale of two halves.
Wow, look at you. I didn't even ask you that. How'd you know I was going to ask? That's incredible.
Yes, because you're you.
Well, maybe I wasn't, though. I mean, interesting. To change my game around a little bit. You know, I'm sorry. You know what else was a tale of two halves? The Lions watch party. You see that at Ford Field?
Oh, man, I felt so bad for those people. I mean, they're going to be sick for a month.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson, I knew you were in trouble when you walked in. If there's one thing I know about Steve Spagnuolo, it's that Steve Spagnuolo is going to dial up a game plan. Spags. That's what he does.
I thought we only dialed up blitzes. We dial up game
Game
plans
plans,
too.
yeah.
I thought the phrasing dialed up is for a blitz and only for
it's for a game
blitz.
plan as well.
Okay.
Kansas City Chiefs, the last great American dynasty? What's the matter, Jess?
She's just exasperated with you.
Luka Doncic, 73. Joel Embiid, 70. Devin Booker, 62. Karl Anthony Towns, 62. But the real proof that the NBA has a defense problem is P.J. Washington scoring 43 off the bench. I mean, how?
Do we have a defense?
Everyone's averaging 20 points a game now.
But do we have a defense problem, or is it just that the offense is that good?
No one's playing defense anymore, Dan.
Really?
That's what it feels like to me.
You have to look at some 80s basketball if you think they were playing defense back then and aren't now.
Death, taxes, and Duke squeaking out a win at Cameron Indoor after getting bailed out by the refs. Thinking of all the Lions fans today that booked trips to Las Vegas up 24/7. Dan, the L in Las Vegas stands for let's hope you can get a refund, Lions fans.
Put it on the poll, please, Juju, at Le Batard Show. Would you ever book a trip to the Super Bowl if your team was up 17 at the half?
Putting back the tray table on United Airlines. Dangerous game. It's tricky. It is. I hurt my thumb last night. Yeah. It is.
You can tell when lacrosse season
You
starts
gotta, like,
firing back up
yeah,
when
these-
it's airline when it turns into airline observations.
These are tricky, though. These you have to take out, slide out, then pull it out so you can eat. And then once you put it back in, you have to slide it back in before you put it back in. There's a slide scale. It's like weird. It's weird. It's hard. Tricky game.
Get ready for 3.5 months of airline observations.
He got in at 1:30 this morning on a flight from Chicago.
The Windy City. Delayed, man. And O'Hare. Forget it.
Is that where you watched the NFC title game?
Yes.
Rach scored 2 goals.
Yes, she did. She had a game. It's exciting. Where was I? Shocked to see the Niners and Chiefs playing in another Super Bowl. I thought they would never, ever, ever get back together. I had to look these up.
Really, you don't know Taylor Swift lyrics off the top of your head?
Going to be a cruel summer for Lamar Jackson.
He's delivering them seamlessly.
Oh, God.
49ers, a quarterback away. Marquez Valdez-Scantling never makes it look easy. Even when catching the football. It's a heart attack, that guy. Detroit Lions, a head coach away. C.J. Gardner-Johnson waving goodbye to 49er fans in the second quarter. Hey, C.J., you counted your chickens before they could convert a 4th down attempt. In this week's edition of Holy or Old, Jameer Nelson's son is on TCU. He poured in 30. Nelson was so good.
I saw during one of the bowl games, there was a Blades brother running around, I think, for Duke, and it was Al Blades' kid. It wasn't even Brian or Benny.
What?
Yeah, it's like the son of the son.
He played at Miami for several years. You just found out about him?
You know what the F in Zay Flowers stands for?
I do not.
Fumbled at the goal line. Dan, I don't know if you know, but this week, UNC and Duke. And UNC is a top 3 team. Since I mentioned Blue Bloods, Miami, hard-fought win against 12-8 Pitt.
Righted the ship.
You needed that one. Ed Cooley leaving Providence for Georgetown, but asking Providence for a bonus check for the energy he brought there. Ed Cooley, the Stugotz, is strong in you. The E in Ed Cooley stands for energy. 0-3 since the trade, 30% from the field, 14% from 3, and a team worst minus 58 in 90 minutes. The only thing scary about Terry are those stats. Scary Terry. Dan, it isn't officially college basketball season until Joe Lunardi has Wake Forest in his next 4 out. The Deeks. We're getting there. It's close. Enjoy the next 2 weeks, people. Soon, me, you, baseball, Joey Chestnut. Katie Nolan, do it in the finals.
Oh, come on.
What happened? I mean, it's super impressive. I'm just saying. Finish it off. Do it in the finals. Dan, since you didn't do what I asked you to do, which was to take care of the Mauer situation, allow me to do the honors. Dan, you know how many people have more playoff wins than Joe Mauer? Anyone who has ever made the playoffs and won a single game.
I don't understand what's happening with Stugotz. The Knicks are legitimately good this year. He hasn't wanted to talk about them.
No,
he doesn't
don't
know.
jinx it.
He doesn't know what the shortstop for the Mets looks like when presented a photo of Francisco Lindor. But when it comes to Joe Mauer, it has re-sparked Stugotz's interest in sports to keep him out of the Hall of Fame.
Well, playoff wins are a catcher statistic.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know if
Everyone knows that.
knew that.
Mauer's postseason record was Joe in 10. You didn't do it.
I didn't keep him out of the Hall of Fame. That is correct.
When people say he's not your average Joe, I assure you they're not talking about Joe Mauer. Top 4 Minnesota Twins from the 2009 team. The year Joe Mauer won MVP. Yes, the rare top 4. OLI, Joe Mauer. Number 4, Joe Nathan. Number 3, Michael Kadire. Dan, he had a year. Dan, look up Kadire's year. He had a year. I looked it up.
Mauer was the MVP.
Did
So?
Mauer had a year that year too?
Number 2, Jason Kubel. Coobs. Number 1, Justin Morneau. Dan, the New York Knickerbockers. That's all I got.
That's it. There it is. Finally, he mentioned Mauer before the Knicks.
They
I was
just
wondering.
announced a Julius Randle injury. That's going to keep him out.
I know, separated shoulder. LeBron didn't just beat Steph Curry over the weekend. You know who else LeBron defeated, Dan?
Father Time.
He did. Father Time is no longer undefeated.
He was. I thought Brady beat him first.
Oh, LeBron. When's it going to end? Dan, you're Detroit. Sheila Ford. Bill Belichick. He calls you today. What do? I asked you a question.
You yell at him for Matt Patricia?
I set the over-under on the amount of I told you so text that Bill Polian sent yesterday at 20, and I'm taking the over. You?
He said he couldn't play quarterback. He's the two-time.
Well, he can't until he wins a Super Bowl.
Two-time MVP at quarterback.
Yeah, I understand that.
Did make more of an impact as a receiver in yesterday's game.
Just a reminder, you heard it here first 3 weeks ago. The Clippers are winning the NBA championship.
They throttled Boston, man. They went into Boston and dragged them.
Yep. Bob Weir, do a concert in Vegas at Super Bowl week. I dare you. Actually, I beg you. 30 and 39. 30 up 39 for 241 yards, 1 touchdown. Patrick Mahomes, the Alex Smith, is strong in you. The Detroit Lions came so close to going an entire season without acting like the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff loves entering through the back door. What?
He does.
He does. Oh, does he? Mike Wilbon, a rant complaining about analytics, collision course. To lose in that fashion, hell will freeze over before the Lions get to a Super Bowl. Speaking of hell, Art Briles. Dan, those are the weekend observations.
Stugotz, the 49ers and Jemele Hill have ruined what would have been a excellent segment here that we were building up toward, where she doesn't know this, I do not believe. I believe her husband, I hope her husband in this one instance was able to keep a secret, because our intention was to bring him on after the Lions won at the end of the segment and surprise Jemele Hill, because we'd worked it out. We had talked to him in private. He was going to be here, but he's a Lions fan and she's a San Francisco 49ers fan, and they've been taunting each other, and he was going to burn her San Francisco 49ers jersey live on air is what was going to happen. Yes, Jemele, yes. Look at that. Look at that's right. Yes, that's what we had it all planned. It was all ready to go, and everything got ruined by the Detroit Lions totally self-destructing. Did you end up watching the game in or around him, with him? Where were you? Paint the picture for us as his entire life fell apart in front of you and you enjoyed it.
First of all, I cannot believe you all were going to do that to me. You know what, Dan? First, Jason Whitlock, now this. Look at you.
As a lovable surprise. We were going to surprise you, betray you with the help of your husband, but it all got ruined because your 49ers. Man, you were scared in that first half.
Oh, look, I'm not going to lie. I was already preparing my acceptance of that ass-kicking speech, okay? And, I was texting some of my friends because everybody, of course, was blowing me up in the first half. Like, are you okay? Do I need to do a wellness check? Like, all these things. I'm just like, I'm not actually playing, guys. I'm just a fan kind of enjoying this, this game in this moment. And so, yes, I was totally in the mind frame that this was going to be a humiliating exit from the playoffs. Like last year, the 49ers had a bit of an excuse. Brock Purdy got hurt in the game. We proceeded to, just get completely pummeled by the Eagles. This year, there would be no excuse. And worse, this is my husband's team. He has been antagonizing and terrorizing me since obviously both these teams played to get to this position. And so he chose a wise option. We did not watch the game together. I was at home by myself, which frankly was probably better for society in general. He was at a Buffalo Wild Wings that's close to us where Lions fans gathered to watch the game. He found his tribe or his pride since they're Lion fans. And so he was watching separately. We did not text each other at all during the game. To his credit, he somehow restrained himself. Even though the 49ers were down 24-7, I'm truly shocked by that because I thought for sure he would start early trying to, humiliate me, but he didn't. And then the game is over. And of course, I was like, you know what? He probably needs some time to mourn. Let me be the bigger person. Like Michelle Obama said, let me go high. All right. And he was at the bar with some friends that we know. They came to our house. He immediately hopped out the car, got in his car, and left. I didn't even see him for like a couple hours after the game because he was so destroyed. And then when he needed a buffer. So he went to one of his friends' house. When he finally came in, the door, he came through our side garage door, and he just peeked his little eyeballs around the corner and looked at me as I was sitting on the couch ever so gracefully. And because I'm a good wife, I said to him, I realize this is the first time that you have experienced this. You're in shock. You're still processing it. I will not be nearly as petty as you probably would have been had that outcome of the game gone the other way. I reminded him how magnanimous I was because had the shoe been on the other foot, trust me, I probably would have had to sleep somewhere else last night.
Well, like I said, he was going to burn the jersey on air as a surprise.
Correct.
That was something that was organized and ready to go.
So, Jemele, now that you know what he was willing to do, does he have a Lions jersey you'd like to burn on air here? Or
Okay, so here's the thing. Because, I recognize I had my jerseys in a certain place. And I realized a few days ago they were gone. And he had put this picture on Instagram that everything, a lot of the things that I own that I read, all my 49er stuff, he put it somewhere in a bag and he said he was throwing it away. That is what he's told me. I was like, okay, I see what you're doing here. So all of his Lions stuff I have in a secret location. I will not return it until I see my items. So he will just not be able to wear any Lions gear, period, because we need to do. He's holding my stuff for ransom. I'm now holding his stuff for ransom. So all I know is I better get my stuff back or he's never going to see these Lions items again.
Do you think it's at all strange, Jemele, that the two of you, as husband and wife who love each other and love sports, cannot watch this game together?
Oh, is that weird? Listen, sometimes, and Dan, I hope you have figured this out as somebody who got married not too far from when I got married, is that sometimes you have to know your strengths and know your weaknesses. There is no way our household would have survived if we watched that game yesterday. And I'm glad that he had the wisdom to know and understand this, because I think that would have been bad for both of us. The emotional upheaval, it was obviously, a tale of two halves. Like his behavior in the first half, my behavior in the second half, that's good for nobody. So I don't think it's strange. I think it's wise, Dan, that we don't watch this game together.
What are your sports observations from yesterday? What did you find interesting about the
tale of two halves?
The strategizing, about the decisions that Dan Campbell made when Dan Campbell was going for it on fourth down? Were you saying you're a fool, or were you scared because you're scared of the aggressive coach going for it on fourth down when he can steal your soul?
So, Dan, but I have the text messages to prove it. A friend of mine who's a really big 49er fan, we were going back and forth texting during the game. And I said to him, when we started to get a little bit more momentum in the second half, I said, Dan Campbell's going to give us an extra possession because he can't resist the urge to go for it on fourth down. And he's going to give us the ball back. And I promise you it's going to be a key moment. I literally predicted exactly what would happen. And obviously, because of my husband, I've watched pretty much every Lions game this season. And I get it that is part of what makes him a great coach. It's part of what changed the culture in Detroit. It's in his DNA. But despite what analytics say, situation and momentum matter. And that was the wrong point in the game to me to go for it. If there was any point in the game I thought he should have gone for it, it was before the half on their last score, if they score there, I'm not saying he made a bad decision, actually getting the points. I was actually pretty surprised because I thought with them being up so significantly on the road, he was going to try to put a stake through the 49ers' heart. And he took the points, and I was really surprised. Fast forward to the second half, at that point in the game, given what you've seen, and the game is tightening up now, it's like you take the points. There's no, I understand the philosophy of doing the things that got you there, but you also, part of coaching is being able to understand the moment. And I thought he let them down despite the drops and obviously the turnover, the fumble that kind of, again, was part of the turning points of the game, is that you still have to know the context of the moment. And I felt like that was where he misread it. That just because you take the points in one instance doesn't mean from here on out you can't ever take the points again, or you can't ever go for it on fourth down again. That's not what that means. So I think maybe in some reflection in the offseason, hopefully he'll realize is that just because that's part of my DNA, it's okay if I make a different choice. That doesn't change that I still don't believe in the way that I coach.
Jemele, what are your thoughts on the whole Brock Purdy of it all?
So this is what I don't understand about people is that, like, I think they don't really get where the phrase once in a generation talent comes from. Patrick Mahomes is a once in a generation talent. So that means when you see that, everybody else doesn't have that same chip. And just because you don't have the physical ability, even from an arm talent standpoint and a creativity standpoint of Patrick Mahomes or of Lamar Jackson or of Josh Allen or any of these quarterbacks in the league that are considered to have elite talent, that doesn't mean that you can't win. Okay. And, you have to, what I like about Brock Purdy is that he plays within his strength. And we literally are seeing him grow up, because people forget that, like, he does not have that much starting experience, even though obviously he's headed to the Super Bowl. I thought against Green Bay, and I said this to you guys when I was here that week, is that I thought he took a major step there because he had a terrible game, but he was able to collect himself in the end, and they won the game. Because I'm not saying he's going to be Joe Montana, but the one thing that people forget about the catch, the infamous game-winning touchdown between Joe Montana and Dwight Clark, Joe Montana was terrible in that game. He threw multiple interceptions, collected himself at the end, and he was a guy that was not considered the most physically talented quarterback. He was considered to have above average cool and calmness and obviously a pocket presence at the time. And so Brock Purdy just has to be what he is. And I think he's answered a lot of questions. Like, he made 3 or 4 plays yesterday easy that we haven't seen from him before, but that he made because he was rising to the moment. Those scrambles that he had. And yes, he did luck up on the pass that bounced off the Lions defender's helmet and right into the hands of Brandon Ayuk. Like, yes, sometimes lucky moments happen. Just ask Eli Manning when it comes to, obviously the throw he made to win the Super Bowl. But I think that you have to give Brock Purdy a lot of credit, and we have to stop having this kind of dumb dialogue about whether or not he is elite. You don't have to be elite to win a Super Bowl. I promise everybody in the history of the game has not met the criteria of what some people consider to be elite.
I'm confused by why it's happening, though. I'm confused why people need to get so right the proper measurement of how good Brock Purdy is, as so much so that it makes a guy who should be a lovable underdog story polarizing somehow.
It's all about narrative, Dan. And you would think this would be something that would endear people to Brock Purdy. The fact that he was Mr. Irrelevant in the draft and, was sitting there just kind of buried within the organization. And now he's the starting quarterback and headed to a Super Bowl. And I think a lot of times, because in our mind, there is a perception or narrative about what a quarterback that goes to the Super Bowl should look like. No disrespect, but Rex Grossman went to a Super Bowl. So again, it's not a perfect science. And Brock Purdy's a lot better than Rex Grossman, and he's a lot better than Jimmy Garoppolo, the last quarterback to take the 49ers there. But the thing is, he interrupted a narrative, and that is why I think he gets more flack than he deserves. In a lot of people's minds, he is accomplishing things that people in his station shouldn't be accomplishing. And because he was in the MVP conversation for so long this season, this guy who looks like he was probably a social studies teacher, who is the IT guy that shows up when something is wrong with their laptop, he is interrupting all these different narratives about what it's supposed to look like. And I think people have kind of used that against him in the narrative in discussing him.
How did your husband sleep last night?
I think he went to bed still mad about the game. Like not at me. We woke up talking about it like this one is gonna hurt. It's gonna stick a long time. But now that you guys have informed me about what the plan was in a Lions victory, this is gonna be a real fun day for him. And by fun, I mean the opposite of that. So
he was seething. You could feel him seething, correct? You could feel the energy next to you seething.
I could feel it when he came in the house. Like it was just, I knew it was going to be ever present. Like this was going to be one of those, he wasn't going to be able to get over quickly. So, but last night, he was able to gather himself, after we had watched some of the coverage. I think we watched Hell's Kitchen. Yeah, I think that's what it was. So Gordon Ramsay helped to calm him down. So, I will be more sensitive to him in his time of need than he would have been if the shoe was on the other foot, because I'm built like that. I'm built for the high road.
That was your friendly neighborhood race lady.
We didn't even discuss race with her again. That's a record number of appearances. Thank you, Jemele. Good talking to you. Congratulations. We'll catch up with you during the Super Bowl. The NBA, I think, Stugotz, has a pretty substantive problem on its hands that revealed itself again the other day when 15 minutes before tip-off, Joel Embiid said, I'm not playing against Denver. And the ABC game, a game that a lot of people paid money to see Joel Embiid. If you're watching Nuggets Sixers without Joel Embiid, that's not what you paid for. And it feels like false advertising. The NBA is investigating how soon before tip-off it was learned that Joel Embiid is out of that game. And when I say they've got a substantive problem, the LSU South Carolina women's basketball game at the top of the sport between two of the best teams in that sport did a better ratings number than Heat Celtics on TNT. Heat Celtics is two of the best teams with a rivalry. It's a featured game. The stars were playing in that game. It's not even like somebody was sitting out. But now the NBA is investigating Joel Embiid sitting in the Nuggets game. And I would ask you, if you paid for tickets to that game to see Denver, Philadelphia, and then you're already at concessions, you're already there, and you learn that Joel Embiid is not playing, don't you feel lied to?
I'd be pissed off, yes. Yes, 100%. I'd be disappointed. The NBA on Saturday had a bunch of games on national TVs. They were the featured sport. Like it's, the network's trying to get you in the mode of football's over, here's the NBA season's going on. And they had a bunch of games on national TV. I don't know what you do when Embiid comes out moments before the game, because I do believe Joel Embiid. I don't think he's afraid of Jokic. I think he wants to play. I think he wants to play every game. But what are you supposed to do when he comes out before the game and says, hey, something's not right? And it's a regular season game that in his mind is meaningless.
And he has a history of injuries, which I think you have to take into account too.
But customers don't care about that sort of thing. Jokic plays all the games. Jokic doesn't do anything in the way of sitting. And I'm also juxtaposing this against, Stugotz. We can celebrate the popularity of women's sports, which have gotten huge, and they have earned it. South Carolina and LSU have earned that number because it's an interesting basketball game. But to see what is in college sports are minor league sports compared to professional sports. To see this is like seeing a college football game do a bigger number than one of the big NFL football games, where you're like, Celtics, Heat should do a pretty substantive number, and it's getting beaten out here by something that wouldn't have at any point during the history of basketball becoming a big television event since the games were on tape delay in the 80s. This is the first time that you're seeing something like this happen with the ratings numbers.
Well, I think there are a couple red flags for the NBA, one of which certain owners in the NBA that you would imagine would have a difficult time parting with something that they identified with. Mark Cuban, leaving. But this is the same guy that knew exactly when to get off the internet bubble as it was about to burst, and he made his name that way. I think what's most concerning about these NBA numbers is, and people are going to make accusations that it's woke, they've made those accusations about all sports. All sports. And all sports are trending upward. I mean, even hockey, the Panthers-Bruins Game 7 was a ratings bonanza. You have women's college basketball outrating the NBA. Baseball, I know they had a bad fall classic, but there was an uptick in their ratings. NFL is as big as it's ever been right now from a ratings standpoint. There's been a big boom with live sports rights, and the NFL and the NBA is trailing far behind.
Also, this matchup between LSU and South Carolina, this is like a national championship caliber matchup that you might only get to see one time this year because they didn't get to play each other in the tournament last year because South Carolina lost in the Final Four. So we got the Iowa-LSU matchup instead. But these are two of probably the most famous head coaches in all of women's basketball at this moment, Kim Mulkey and Dawn Staley, going head-to-head against each other with two like superstar-studded teams, and we might not get to see it again for the rest of the season the way things play out with their schedules and everything. So I do think I don't know how many Heat Celtics games we've seen in the last just year. Like they've played each other a number of times. Frankly, I have sat here dissecting those games. It feels like 30 times. It feels like they play every single day. And so to me, like watching LSU and South Carolina, a matchup of two teams that are like two of the best in the sport, it's a no-brainer. The stakes are just higher in that game. It was a huge game, and South Carolina almost lost, which would have been a great upset win for LSU, but South Carolina was able to pull it off and win. And also the home environment, the crowd at the game was like super into it, and it was really fun to watch.
But what you're saying there that is accurate is stakes. That's what football has. That's why football's regular season is so important, and it's what baseball and hockey and basketball do not have. And in basketball, you've got more and more players sitting out. And Joel Embiid, I would as a customer feel robbed if I'm learning 15 minutes before game time when I'm already at the arena that I'm not going to get to see Joel Embiid. Because if you're not going to give me stakes, you at least need to give me stardom or unprecedented access to a skill level that I haven't seen before, which is what Joel Embiid has.
This was a point of focus for the NBA. They said things like what happened with Joel Embiid. If it indeed I know you mentioned that they're looking into it. If what they look into turns out that this was player rest and load management, they said on the front end before this season they were trying to eradicate it. They've done things to spice up the regular season. You talk about stakes. They did the in-season tournament. This game that you're talking about, Heat Celtics, was part of a week that they marketed as rivalry week. They had all their marquee matchups. You had a great moment with LeBron and Steph Curry over the weekend that several years ago would be the thing that you would talk about if it wasn't going up against Championship Monday. They're doing things that they should. They've got new stars coming online into the league, and it's not working. The numbers keep dipping. I don't know, outside of a drastic change to the sport. Maybe there's peaks and valleys, but they're scoring a bunch, and everyone loves scoring. They have a lot of problems and a lot of concerning things going on with their television numbers.
The 76ers and Joel Embiid are in an interesting spot because put into place this year was a minimum number of games played in 65 that he needs to play in to be eligible to win the MVP. He's played in 33 so far, and there's 38 to go. So he can only miss 6 more games the rest of the season. He's already missed 11 so far this season. So at a certain point, he may cost himself the MVP to just be resting for the playoffs.
We mentioned last week that story with Halliburton, Stugotz. It's a fascinating one. He's got incentive clauses that if he makes All-NBA, and I think he's got to play 65 games in order to make All-NBA, he gets $41 million. But he rushed back, and he got re-injured.
Right.
Because he rushed back. Because why wouldn't you rush back if you're incentivized by $41 million in order to rush back?
Isn't part of the problem, though, the biggest star in the game? Like, Mike's right, okay? You have guys taking, nights off consistently. That never used to happen. But the biggest star in the game is an international player. It seems like he doesn't want to be here. He's on a team and in a city that no one really cares about, Nikola Jokic. That's one of the problems. Like, it used to be Michael Jordan, it was Kobe Bryant, it was LeBron James, and now the best player in the game is a guy that appears to be bored being here and wants to get out of here as quickly as possible.
But he plays all the games. He's not your problem.
Does.
He's not load managing. He's just a load that's hard for others to manage.
No, but I'm wondering if him being your best player is a problem. That's what I'm wondering.
I mean, that the game is going international and that he doesn't have a personality type that's easy to sell. Usually the marketers figure out Michael Jordan wasn't terribly interesting. We figured out how to make him interesting. Like the marketers did that. It's not because he was filling up a bunch of magazine profiles or television sound bites with a whole lot of personality.
No, but his style of play made him vastly interesting.
The NBA, I don't think that's the issue. I really don't. I don't know if it's changing the court dimensions. They're blessed the same way that the NFL was blessed in that they had the greatest of all time playing against the next greatest of all time. LeBron's still in this league. Steph is still in this league as new stars like Tatum and Jokic are there. You get to see these matchups cross-pollinating, and it's not birthing the numbers that everybody else is.
To me, the Embiid conversation's like just slightly different from the Heat Celtics conversation because in the Heat game, correct me if I'm wrong, but everyone played, right? Like Jimmy played.
Yep.
Both teams had their starters in the game. I really just think when it comes to it, like the LSU South Carolina game is just a better product. It's a more exciting game, and it actually matters. It just means more. It's SEC women's basketball, Dan. And the Heat have stunk lately. They stink. I'm sorry. You can tell when the Heat stink because this show, we stopped talking about them. And guess what? We haven't talked about them in a couple weeks. Wow. Losing streak.
With the Embiid thing, don't most people have the perspective of, yes, if I find out 15 minutes before the game, I'm going to be disappointed, but that's how this works. They think he might be a little injured, so there's I remember trying to go to Big 3 games, like I'm gonna go to finally a Big 3, and then LeBron sat out the game, and it's like, yeah, I'm a little upset, but I'm not like rioting.
Yeah, but you're a dad. You circle one game on the calendar because you can afford one game for the year.
All right, and then you have a nice lesson for your
child.
And
you go Embiid and Jokic, and then Embiid doesn't show up.
And you tell your child, hey, sometimes happens like that.
But Daddy,
why are we so upset?
But
it's
Daddy,
okay.
I wanted to see Embiid.
Why are those my only two choices? A little upset and rioting.